Testing 1, 2, 3. Well, guys, I know we're not technically starting for 18 minutes, but I guess we can go ahead and get rolling since you're already popping some questions, and we're here to chat. Pardon me if I cough a little bit. It's not the COVID, just old age. Let me go ahead and ditch the intro here. And the controls. There we are. And here's my smiling face. Let's see what we got here. First question, you think Tamiya will ever lower the prices now that some of the other companies are getting too close to comfort? Well, anything's possible. It's certainly customer driven to an extent. As long as they're getting away without doing it, they probably won't. But if people start making comparable quality products that are costless, I would think they would have to. Most probably driven by their executive staff, and of course the actual retailers themselves can have some input on that, but unless they're a dedicated hobby shop, they tend to follow the flow. But right now, Tamiya still has such a brand recognition, they probably don't have to. You've got people that, and this isn't anything unique to kit models, but you've got people out there that if it doesn't say Tamiya, they're not interested. It's just the same with Chevy, Ford, BMW. But I would think they would, knowing the way they've done things in the past, they've always enjoyed a certain exclusivity because of their price, and they may try to keep the price up and enhance the quality, maybe by adding more photo etch, more options or something like that. But and it would also depend on what the kit is. Remember, the older Tamiya molds aren't really that expensive because they've been around so long, they made their money on them. So they're certainly not above adjusting their prices, though. You know, I got that Walker Bulldog, and you get a Hanomag half track for under $20, brand spanking new. And then you look right next to it, and there's their Chaffee for $54 in the same scale. And you're like, But one mold was made in the 70s, and one mold was made in the 90s or the 2000s. So that's, but do not undersell the value of name recognition. As anybody in any business will tell you, that's key. I'll give you a classic example, which is actually something we were going to talk about today. So, we'll probably loop back to this for the folks that were interested in talking about it. But Mystic Modeler was contacting me earlier. He couldn't find any pledge floor wax for covering his models, and he said it was $30 on Amazon. And a long story real short, we found something called Quick Shine for $9 a bottle. And I went out on some forums, and sure enough, I just Googled quick shine versus pledge for coating model, kit models. I think those are the only buzzword, and I bam, took me right to a couple of forums that talked about it. No one, everyone's heard of pledge. They took it. It's which, by the way, is the exact same stuff Future used to be, and I think they actually bought them out. But pledge, and the guy says I use quick shine. It worked just as well, and apparently one of them even went so far as to contact, I guess it was the Amazon rep, and they found out that the formula in quick shine is exactly the same stuff that's in pledge. Or this is what they claim. And he said he used it on his models. It worked fine. It did just as good a job at a third the price. Why would you pay $30 for pledge? Oh, of course, it turned out these were also bundle wrapped several bottles, but still, why would you pay more for pledge than you would for quick shine? Because you know what pledge is, name recognition. It's that simple. Same reason that well, if you don't mind me jumping back in history a little bit, it's funny you mentioned Douglas. You mentioned the Pete. I did the Nakajima roof recently. It's an older kit, but it went together like a Swiss watch. Older does not mean worser, which is something else we're going to talk about because I've been working on a couple of Glencoe Strombecker repops that I have the pictures up here. We'll talk about that later. But the getting back to the pledge and the quick shine and all that stuff, I had to do research to find out what quick shine was because I didn't know, but I knew what pledge was. And a lot of people I go with what I know. It really is just that simple. And getting into the Wayback Machine. When after the Monogram and Revell merger, when you have to remember Monogram was the acquiring company. All right, they picked off they didn't buy Aurora. They bought the assets of Aurora, but Revell they bought. Yet, for reasons that still irk a lot of people, as time went by, the Monogram name was Revell Monogram. Revell went on top for a long time, as much for tax reasons as anything else. But over time, the Monogram name drifted away and Revell became dominant, even though Monogram was actually the parent company that owned everything. The reason was simple. Monogram, the bigger market, had moved overseas, and Revell had a better name recognition. And that was all there was. The decision was basically that simple. And I think this is probably after Tom Gannon had already retired. But in fact, Tom Gannon, after he retired and you have to be careful how you word this or people get confused, the Monogram Revell Industrial Complex, he got a group together and they wound up buying the company. And he went from being, in charge of it to actually owning it for a couple of years. And I think that's when they made that shift because it was just a cold, calculated decision. People in outside of the borders of the United States recognize the Revell name better. It sells better. Doesn't matter what kit's better. It's what people recognize. And so now to this day, you still see Revell, even though it's not the same thing, which is I've been trying to put together a video on the modern Revell, and I've got some material on it, but I can't verify it. And I'm afraid of sticking my foot in my mouth, which I do often enough with research. But apparently the new Revell isn't anything like the old Revell. They don't actually, they own some molds that they managed to get, but the stuff's they're all shipped to China. It's made there. They just come to the U.S. and distribute it. So it's apparently a very small company, just a few people that have the rights to the name and some of the molds. And if you go to their website, they don't have anywhere near the full catalog they used to have. They have, kind of their greatest hits, and that's about it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. They're the same molds. But the Revell P, as I got pointed out in some other videos, that Revell P51 I had is actually, you look on the bottom of the tail fin and it's stamped Monogram 1997. So, and I have two of the Revell P40s, which are actually the Monogram P40s for a Pearl Harbor thing I want to do on the P40s at Pearl Harbor. So, it gets really confusing. But, again, getting back to what we were initially talking about, it's all about name recognition, brand recognition. And that... Think about how many good products are out there. Well, okay. Here's a current example we can all identify with. Boeing. Tell someone they're getting on a 737 MAX, even though the 737 MAX just got approved to return to the air. But you tell people that they're going to fly on a 737 MAX, and because of all the bad press, they're likely to, I'm not flying on that plane, even though apparently it's all been fixed. But again, name recognition, which works both ways, Edsel. So And that's why Pledge can charge, $27 or $30 for a bottle, and Quick Shine has to charge $9. Exploding P40s per hour. Actually, Alfred, since you brought that up, I did a video a long time ago. Hey, Justin, glad you made it. I did a video a long time ago. It was my first video to approach 1 million hits. It had 973,000 hits. It was called the P-40 Pearl Harbor Boys. It was about Taylor and Welch, the two P-40 pilots that got airborne and shot down 6 or 7 Japanese aircraft. And it went into great detail. And just before it got to 1 million hits, I went on my channel one day and it was just gone. Now, I don't monetize, so it's not like I lost a penny out of this, but that was going to be my first million. The hits just become way keeping score. But I was like, well, I was about to have, what happened? And that was a third of the hits on my whole channel. And they never, I got a thing said copyright infringement. And I borrowed some clips and stuff from air shows and things, and maybe some music I used, I don't know. But I didn't get a copyright claim warning, or I just, boom, got a strike, and it was gone. It was taken down. I didn't bother to appeal it because I knew I had borrowed some stuff. And I was like, okay. And it took them a couple of years to find it. So now I want to do it again, but I want to do it with models and all my own original material, so I don't worry about getting popped again. And just real quick and dirty, if you've seen movies like Tora, and don't even mention that movie that we shall not say its name, with Ben Affleck and Josh Hartnett, because I'm trying to pretend that never happened. But, hello, Dirt. Okay, we have a Boogie Nights fan with us. But anyway, it is true the guys have been out partying all night, dancing, playing cards and stuff. They were in their tuxedos. They just racked out when the attack happened. Their P-40s were at Haleiwa. Now, I don't know how many of you guys know anything about Hawaii, but Haleiwa is on the north end of the island. And this island's only like 10 miles across. And there was a little auxiliary strip up there, and their squadron had moved up there for a gunnery exercise, which is one of the only reasons they had any ammunition. When the attack happened, they did get on the phone. I think they were near Wheeler. They got on the phone and called Haleiwa and said, listen, load up our guns, warm up our planes, we're on our way. So, and they stole a car. And like you saw in the movie Tora, they did in fact steal a convertible Oldsmobile, brand new one from what I understand. And they drove up there and they did get strafed on the way. Fortunately, the Japanese missed. And they got to Haleiwa. They jumped in their planes. They took off. They flew down to the harbor. They came across the B-17s, realized then B-17s, of course, the B-17s were unarmed. They had their guns, but they were stored inside the aircraft, and I don't think they had any ammunition. Then they went and they picked out some bombers and shot them down, mostly Valdai bombers. And they did get bounced by some Zeros, and they wound up splitting up, and they wound up shooting it up with them. And the P-40B model only had 250s in the nose and 4 30s, 2 in each wing, which was, a lot of people don't realize that in 1940-41, most fighter planes had 30 caliber guns on them. The fact that the P-40 had a pair of 50 calibers made it an unusually hard-hitting airplane for the time. But when they were at Haleiwa, there was only 30 cal ammo, so only the Browning wing 30 calibers were loaded. So they shot down a couple of Japanese aircraft with those. Then they landed under fire, got 50 and 30 caliber ammunition reloaded. And this is never brought in the movies. They actually landed under fire and took off, reloaded under fire, and got back in the air. And they shot down a few more. And there's more to the story than that. But basically, they ran out of ammo, and the Japanese were running away. And I think they're officially credited with 6 and a probable. And I think Welch got 4 and Taylor got 2, with Welch having 1 disputed. But anyway, yeah, that's right. Welch was killed testing the F-100. And the early F-100A, the tail was too small. But according to Yeager's book, and take it for whatever it's worth, he'd actually talked to Welch about it. You really shouldn't be diving that thing. There was a little tussle between Yeager and Welch because supposedly a couple of days before Yeager took the X-1 through Mach 1, Welch nosedived an XP-86, what would become the F-86 Sabre. He was a civilian now, test flying, and he'd gone up to like 41,000 feet, run the throttle to the wall, and nosed it steeply down, and managed to bust Mach 1. But since he had not gone out to set a record, and they didn't have all the equipment to test it, it was never officiated. But a lot of people heard the sonic boom, and which would have meant that he actually went through the sound barrier before Yeager did. And Pancho Barnes, depending on whose books you want to believe, Yeager was her boy, and she was really pissed at Welch for doing that. She basically called him a liar to his face. So supposedly, internet stuff here, so take it for what it's worth, he did it again the next day, right over the Happy Bottom Riding Club, and she heard that loud boom. They said she never spoke to him again. And then a few days later, Yeager went and did it, and I understand that some years ago that Yeager's official record was changed from first one taking aircraft through Mach 1. They added 3 words: in level flight. And that doesn't take anything away from Chuck's accomplishment. It's just it is what it. History gets messy when you look at it really close. But back to Pearl, the guys had when they came back down, their planes were riddled with bullet holes, and of course Welch was killed in '53, and then Taylor lived to die of old age. In fact, he became a brigadier general. He was, I think he retired a colonel in the Air Force and went to the Alaska Air National Guard and became a brigadier. And he was a technical advisor on Tora Tora Tora. So at least even if they got a few of the details wrong for poetic license or just to streamline the story, at least they got the essence of the thing right. And to give you an idea, how that generation tried to do what they could with what they had. A lot of those P-40s that are blown up, of course, were fiberglass shells. Now, there were no P-40Bs available to make the movie with. They only had E models. And the only person that had one was Frank Tallman, and he managed to get his hands on a couple of them. So they used Tallman's P-40 to make a mold to make the giant full-scale 100% model airplanes that they were blowing up. And yes, they had to put airframes in them and wheels and little motors so they could taxi and stuff to get them to move around. And that one that you see that runs in a truck and explodes, it was on wires and it had a dummy in it. And but the wires broke and it went off on its own. So when it went chopping up. So when you see those guys running for cover, those stuntmen, that's not acting. They're really, but God bless them, they kept the cameras rolling so it didn't go to waste. And Hollywood history, baby. Happy accident. Luckily, no one got hurt filming it. Oh God, EC, you were so right. That movie, we do not speak its name. Star Wars or P-40s and zeros. Since I'm insulting that movie, which is one of my favorite pastimes, I want to point something else out that just really perplexes me. As we all know, making Tora Tora Tora, they had to convert AT-6s to be zeros because there were no zeros. Now there's some flying. So when they make the movie whose name we do not say, they actually go through the trouble of taking some real Japanese zeros or real replicas of Japanese zeros all the way to Hawaii. All right? Okay, great. You're going to have to. And what do? They paint them green. They don't paint them the correct IJN light beige, pale puke green. They paint them olive drab, the dark Japanese that was used later in the war. And they ask them, why did you do that? Well, it looked better on camera. I'm like, wholly weird. Okay. So, no happy accident CGI. Anyway, so that was, that movie is just a gift that keeps on giving. So, anyway, I want to redo my little documentary on them using models. So I bought a couple of P-40s, and it'll just, it'll be still pictures and stuff and maps and things. But there is a Montemayor is a website out there. He does a lot of really good he's great with graphics, and he does a lot of really good stuff. Like he shows where all the torpedoes and bombs hits were, and he shows the attack on Pearl Harbor, as it progressed. And I didn't realize how many torpedoes and bombs the Japanese wasted on an old target ship that they didn't know it was a target ship. So we lost 8 capital ships and they didn't touch an aircraft carrier. Just dumb luck for us. So yay, dumb luck. Hey, Max, what's up? So, anywho, But I know everybody has their favorite thing to coat their models with. I usually use just good old-fashioned clear coat, but I do keep Future Florax around for, or Pledge, I guess. They have made Future since like 1985. But I do keep the Pledge around for covering them. And I figure all you guys have your favorite stuff. But the only thing is, when you order that stuff, make sure you're getting floor wax, because they also have cleaners. And the bottles look similar. Make sure you get the right stuff, or you're going to wind up spraying cleaner all over your airplane. God alone knows what will happen if you do that. You didn't miss anything, Justin. I was just ripping on that movie whose name we do not mention. When they were filming Tora, one of the scenes where all the planes came by, the ship was supposed to be leaving the harbor, but the timing got a little off, so the ship was mostly out of frame when the planes flew over. And when they were looking at the dailies and everything, one of the special effects guys like, "Oh, they're gonna kill me for this," and the director's like, "This all looks so awesome." Hey, John. Scratchy, you made it. Yeah, better than gum. Sarah, how you doing? Mark, you're here. Great. And Mark had just sent me a picture of some Formula from mid-60s Formula One racers. He built a couple of them, and he and I were chatting earlier about the absolute insanity it took for someone to go 150, 200 miles an hour around a track in that aluminum tube, sitting on 30 gallons of high explosive fuel. And yes, Monomayor and Drachenfeld are really good. I like Monomayor because he has those really great graphics, but Drachenfeld has a lot of great information. I think a lot of us tend to watch the same YouTube channels. One of the best things I think that's come out of all this YouTube stuff is people are getting more in contact with history. It's more accessible. Pursuit's talking about Vic Morrow. Yeah, that was, that whole Vic Morrow helicopter crash thing. That's like that and Bert Hexum, the guy that shot himself on stage when they were doing that Time Traveler TV show. He was using blanks, and then there was the Brandon Lee thing. I actually did a video on my Fun with Guns about digital ammunition, why they do so much digitally. And there's a TV show that my wife and I enjoy with what's his name from Firefly, Nathan Fillion, Malcolm Reynolds, where he's a 40-year-old guy, the 40-year-old rookie, they call it the rookie. And one of the things I absolutely hate about that show is everything in their firefights is CGI, and it's bad CGI. I mean, you see, there's no recoil, there's no slides moving, there's no shell casings getting ejected. And when you know as much about guns as any of us do, that completely takes you out of it. I mean, I may use CGI on one of my Fun with Guns videos as a joke, but that's just something I'm doing in my garage. But the muzzle flashes they look, it's so crappy. But believe it or not, you're better off when you're filming movies. You're actually better off to use blanks, what they call Hollywood blanks, which I think often have magnesium in them, because I forget what war movie it was. Back in the 60s, some producer wanted to do a war movie, and he wanted to use live ammo. So I think they got the LAPD to set up some sandbags in a range and put like an MG42 on, Hitler's zipper, and ripped off some rounds in front of the camera. When I looked at it, there was no flash. Because a lot of these guns don't actually make much of a flash, especially in daylight. The camera didn't pick it up well. And you could hardly see, it didn't even like the gun was firing, because you could hardly see smoke coming out of the barrel, because they're using smokeless powder. But when they use the blanks, because they have that magnesium and that big fake flash. I actually did a Fun with Guns videos about, I actually went out with a carbine and a couple of pistols and did some shooting as the sun was setting. And then, of course, added the fake Hollywood flash and compared the two, and of course, sound effects. Because when people go to a movie, they want to be entertained. So they want, when they see guns firing, they want big flashes and loud booms. And as we all know, the acoustics change. If you fire a gun outside, it doesn't make that impressive sound that you're used to hearing in the movies. So I don't mind a little enhancement or something, but they've leaned on it to the point that the people are sitting there with toy guns just going like that, and these fake flash. Oh, good God. It's gotten so bad. Now they just do the same things with airplanes and everything. That's why I can't really enjoy Red Tails that much. It looks like a cartoon. It's like, oh, look, Avatar over Germany. there's a point in time. That's one of the reasons I like The Mandalorian so much, is they use tactile effects. The Favreau minimizes the CGI usage. I think we talked last time about, there's an entire video out on YouTube for them about how they made the Razor Crest as a model and how they filmed it and all the tricks they used in it, and the effects look so good. And I'm that's why that's why I'm so glad that you still have people like Favreau around that still want to use practical effects as much as they can. It's funny you should mention that. I have noticed, the Eastern Bloc has started producing a lot of pretty surprisingly good World War II movies. They've got the people, they've got a lot of the equipment, and I have seen some really impressive stuff come out of Russia, and some quote-unquote small movies. I don't know how many of you guys have seen White Tiger, and the real tragedy behind White Tiger which is more of a ghost story than anything else, but it is a gritty look at life on the Russian front from the Russian side. But they built a full-size Tiger tank because they didn't have one. They couldn't afford to get the Bovington Tiger. So they built from scratch a 100% scale Tiger tank, but it wasn't ready in time for the movie, so they dressed up a Russian tank. And it's not bad. That would make an interesting modeling project for somebody. Go watch the movie White Tiger, find a model Russian tank, and convert it into the one they made for the movie. And since it's a ghost story, you can sort of say that, it's a ghost tank. It doesn't have to be accurate. But they also made a full-size mock-up of a Mark IV that they blew up. Hey, Borussia made it. But overall, the overall quality of the movie is outstanding. And I was like, man, they're blowing Hollywood away. Of course, I guess maybe it helps that, and one of the problems I think we have in America is that in countries like Russia, Ukraine, England, just the entire European side, and some of the Pacific countries, these places were actually invaded or were fighting the war. America, even though we sent people to go fight in the war, for the most part, we didn't suffer that much firsthand anything here. Ships were being sunk off the coast, and Japanese shelled a few places, but the point I'm driving at is that I think it's much more a part of their national psyche. They take it more seriously than we do, at least in their Hollywood. And there's a certain degree of reverence there that's lacking here. And so when they make movies about it, let's just say, I can't say they've never made bad war movies, but generally speaking, I don't think you'll see them putting out the movie whose name we do not say. But anyway, back to models. So, working on the diorama, some interesting stuff has cropped up that I thought I would share with you. I had to go do myself a little, those Kelly Heroes Tiger mock-ups for the time are about the best ones out there. By the way, what I meant to tell you was that full-size Tiger that they made for the movie White Tiger, they didn't use because it wasn't done in time. It actually went up on sale for eBay for about $500,000. I don't know if I suppose they sold it, but the vehicle garage facility that made it, had to try and get some money out of it, so it went up for sale. And it looked good enough that it would, some movie maker should grab it. So anyway, I imagine all you guys photograph your models like I do. And working on the diorama, I ran into some problems of photography with focus. And I wanted to show you guys something. Now, this is something I took just a little while ago. I had to start playing with f-stops and everything. And you'll notice that things are pretty much in focus here. But now here's the exact same photograph with a different f-stop. Same focal point and everything. And you see how blurry everything is. And I had to go relearn my basic photography. But if you're trying to photograph something like a diorama that's got some depth to it, if you have a camera that has manual settings on it, you want to make sure you use a higher f-stop and mount it on a tripod. This is f22 with an ISO of 100, and that's the film speed. But when you do that, when you use that higher f-stop, you're going to get a longer area that's in focus, but it closes the aperture on the camera. So it has to stay perfectly still because that aperture is going to be open for a while for enough light to get in to get a good picture. If you back the f-stop down to like 4, everything's blurry except the very back. You wind up with this very narrow area that's in focus. The when I was photographing the diorama, only a little bit of it would be in focus at a time. And let me see. Okay, now this is f/29 at ISO 100, and you notice everything's pretty clear. There's the same photo without the little paper in the way. But if I go to 6400, which makes for a faster film speed, it gets grainier. Everything's still in focus, but it's grainier. So, in fact, here's a comparison picture. On the left, I have the f-stop set way out, so everything's in focus, but I let the aperture stay open with a film speed of 100. On the right, exact same everything, except I used a higher film speed, but it just did not do as, I mean, it clicked a lot faster, but it just did not take as good of a picture. Oh, yeah, Rich, that sucks. Yeah, it happens. So there's a couple online tutorials that I found that about photographing dioramas, but just remember, the higher the f-stop, the longer, bigger area that'll be in focus, but it's got to be mounted on a tripod because that aperture is going to be open for several seconds. So any movement will make it blurry. Hey, Nova. Yes, I'm sorry, Dario. This is from a digital camera. Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point that the people were bringing up. How do I explain this? All right. If you're using a digital camera, whether you're using the little LED screen on back or whether you're using the eyepiece, you are not seeing what is the picture that's actually being taken. And here's why. Let me explain. You need to see enough through the eyepiece to be able to determine what you're going to photograph. But let's say you go with f/22 high f number, so you're going to have this long area that's going to be in focus from front to rear. So your whole diorama is going to be in focus. So you got a high f-stop, okay? But that means the aperture is going to close real tight, which means when you take the picture, it's going to clip, open, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, close, okay? But as you're looking through your eyepiece, it's doing that in real time. If it was actually giving an ISO 100, the picture would be so dark you couldn't see it. So the eyepiece gives you a false image. It also gives you a false focus image. Normally, the way it works is because you want to manually focus this, you want the focus to be about 1/3 into the diorama, because the way the focal point's set up is that about 2/3 of the focus is behind it, and about 1/3 of the focus is in front of the area that you actually zoom in on. So if your diorama is 6 feet deep, aim about the 2-foot point, get that in focus, stand away from the camera, click, take your hands off, let it do its thing, take several pictures for insurance, adjust the focus a little bit, and you should come up with some good photos. And of course you can play with the lighting, the white balance, and it gets down to the weeds. I'm just dealing with the basic stuff. So long focal length, tripod mounted, low high focal number, low ISO number. Make sure it's on a tripod and don't bump the camera. And I'm sure some of you guys know a lot more about photography than I do. I'm just dealing with the very basic stuff, but I was able to get some pretty good pictures because, as you notice, from front to rear, this whole thing's in focus. And to give you a comparison, I put together a comp slide here. Okay, now here is an example of one that I just took in auto, and you'll notice the only thing that's in focus, is about a 3-inch area where the main characters are. And this is for, of course, the diorama. And here's a terrified little girl on her dad's lap, and he's trying to explain to his son, who's hugging onto his baseball mitt, what's going on. But even the police officer that's right behind him is already getting fuzzy, and the fender in front of you is fuzzy. There's about a 3 area, and that was just done with everything set to auto. Apparently, when you set to auto, the default is a focal length of about 2.8, which is only a couple inches wide. That's why I was taking all those photographs of Mustangs. The wingtips were always blurry. But that's something else. We'll talk about that in a bit. But again, Here's your ISO comparison. If you use a low speed and let the lens hang open, it's nice and bright like on the left. If you use a higher speed for the ISO, a higher number, it's gonna be grainier. And that's the exact same image. You can see how grainy it is compared to that. And there was, I thought I'd put another picture together for you. Anyway, you get the point. High focal number for shooting dioramas, high focal number, low ISO, put it on a tripod, play with it, watch some YouTube videos. But I'm feeling a lot better now that I'm getting the whole thing. Oops, that's not what I wanted. We're going to talk about that later. I'm feeling a lot better now that, that's f-stop 29, ISO 100. But I'm feeling a lot better now that I'm getting these cleaner pictures, which will, and of course, the cleaner the picture, the easier it is to work with on the, because I'm going to desaturate them, age them, and stuff, but you want to start off with a clean picture to begin with. Better the source material, better the product. Let's see. Only Kodachrome, yeah. Mama, don't take my Kodachrome away. Absolutely, Mr. Bursch. Tripod is critical. And I've learned to keep, once I push that button, to keep my fat hands off of it, because even your body can shake the camera. Orange Tabby, you made it. Glad you're here. Well, that's true, Jeff. It does. But one thing I've learned is if you use a 2.8 or a 4 focal length, you'll have trouble photographing a 1/48 scale Mustang without getting part of it out of focus. So you generally have to back it off some. Now, of course, one other old trick is back away from the model entirely, and that tends to help a little bit. But then, of course, the model makes up a smaller part of your total area. They tell you at Fine Scale Modeler, if you're going to submit pictures, don't crop them. Back off, take them, and just send them the whole thing. They'll crop it, and make sure to have a gray card. I keep saying focal point, I mean focal length. There are a gazillion really good, simplified photography videos out there. I recommend getting one on dioramas because it's a little, or taking landscape photos because it's the same basic concept. You see, portrait photos are exactly the opposite. They want a short focal length on a portrait photo because they just want your face and everything to be pretty. They want everything in the background to be blurry because that makes you the center of the attention of the picture. And if you want to do that with a model, back off, use a lower focal length setting. And that way, if you want everything else to be blurry, then great. A lot of guys who do forced perspective like to do that because it ebbs away some of the detail. And you can play with it, get what you like. What's a gray card? Okay, I have one in the other room. They're about $10. You could probably print one, but they're about $10 at any camera store, any place that sells camera equipment. And it's just a card it's called a 15% gray card. And it literally, but what it is a very fixed shade of gray with a specific reflectivity. You set it down next to whatever you're photographing, make your adjustments, take one picture, then remove the gray card, and then take all your photos. When you submit that to somebody, they can look at that gray card and they automatically know every adjustment they need to make to your picture to get the color exactly right. It's kind of like a fixed color that they can work with. And I didn't know what one was till I started submitting models to Fine Scale Modeler, and they said, make sure to put in a gray card image. 3 minutes on YouTube tutorial. And, that's what it was. But basically, it gives them a fixed point of color and reflectivity to make any necessary adjustments to your picture. That's what it is. It's kind of like a fixed point in color. Whereas you might have a fixed point in time or a fixed point in space, this is a fixed point in color, and they can manipulate from there. And I think I paid $10 for one, and I was like, you expect me to pay $10 for a cardboard card? But they're like, dude, this is specifically photosensitive, specifically light reflective, specific color and everything. And sure enough, professionals will, they'll demand if you want to submit something to a magazine, some kind of post photo or something, they're almost guaranteed to ask if you're a gray card image. And all you do is just put it by the person or the thing that you're taking a picture of, click one. That's all they need. It just gives them a basis to run to work from. The best glass you can. Oh, sure. Better lens. But, it's hard to get a bad lens these days. I mean, technology. You realize the quality of my wife's new Galaxy Note is. They've got commercials now where people are filming movies with iPhones, and it turns out that's actually not a joke. I said I'm waiting for the first theatrical release to be filmed on an iPhone, and apparently somebody did do a feature-length film on an iPhone or something recently, but I think it was more of an experiment. But it's just insane how the technology. It's hard to get bad glass. The thing is, you got to know how to use the tools, and photography can get really complicated. And you can't throw everything into one basket. A landscape photographer has a totally different set of lenses than a portrait photographer, and so on. And that's why these guys have so many lenses. I think the was it a 35 to 105 millimeter lens is like considered the ultimate. You know, if you only had to have one lens. But for what we're doing, the standard, you probably, if you bought a DSLR or something, you probably got a 55 millimeter, the 18 to 55 millimeter, I think, and the f-stop will go out to about 29 or 22, which is fine for what we're doing. You can buy better lenses to be sure, but it's, and mind you, although I've spent 3 days taking photographs at diorama just to try and get where I'm at now, because nothing was quite right. Now they're finally coming out, and that's why I'm saying that, you know, the ISO at 100 and the f-stop at 29, and I'm getting these nice clear images. But that's when I'm taking a photograph of the whole diorama, and I want everything to be in focus. When I want to zoom in on the guys and get now all the rules change, so I have this tight focal length and everything. It doesn't really take that long, and you kind of jot down your settings for certain, if this range I want this and this range, and after a while, you know, if you've got like a photo box that you put all your models in and you don't use, and that camera's committed to that, you can pretty much permanently set it up for your settings and just go from there. But the technology is insane. I don't even have Photoshop. I think somebody gave it to me a long time ago. I never got around to learning how to use it. But I use Pinnacle for my videos, which is buggy software, but it's not expensive and it does do a lot. So I put up with the constant bomb outs and reboots. But it has so many features that when I want a Photoshop style picture, I just go into the video editor and make the amendments there and do a screen, you know, it'll take a snapshot. It's not actually screen grab. It actually photographs what you're done and just save that as a file. And there's my picture. You can do an amazing amount of manipulation with this stuff these days. And, but now the hardcores, the you know, the old school types, they'll still use film. Now film is a commitment, because digital, it's no good. Delete, you got your storage space back. But if you guys talk about Bigfoot, that's going to segue us into the next thing I was going to talk about. So anyway, the film guys, that's commitment, because every time they click, that's money, because that film can't be reused. And I don't know anybody that uses film anymore, but God bless those who do. They are better men than I, or ladies. That's true, Hertz there. People have gotten beautifully photographed pictures of Bigfoot, but he has a split end problem, so he just looks furry. He just looks out of focus. And that kind of takes us to Aurora made a Bigfoot kit. Are you sure? Oh, God, I got to ask Andy about that. Yeah, don't mess with Sasquatch. And that brings us to the next little jewel. Where's that thing? And I'm going to read what Andy sent me. I got an email. You guys remember the other morning, if you saw the little coffee I was talking about, he's like, what would you do if you wanted to get girls interested in building models? And most of it came up with kind of the same ideas the companies came up with: animals, flowers, butterflies, things like that. And some of you said, pop stars, and they did. They made like the Beatles and that stuff. Hi, Chris. Anyway, Andy sent me, and I had mentioned the little cat, Sassy, the little Revell kitten. I gotta switch to reading to my trifocals. Okay, now let me find that email from Andy. What did I just open here? Why on earth did that open up? Well, probably because I hit the button. Let's see, email. You guys are gonna love this, and let me go ahead and run the slideshow here. All right. Come on, where's that email? Okay. Now, this is from Andy Anchus, and let me make that a little bit... Oh, it is fitting the screen. Okay. All right. Oh, by the way, guys, I finished the Glencoe addendum. I got that up, and thanks to Andy, because he sent me a ton of beautiful scans and everything of boxes that he had. All right. I mentioned Revell's kitten kit, but not saying anything about a series of 4 furry animals that Revell put out. And apparently this was partly to try and get girls interested in. And there's going to be pictures of them rotating up here. This is a slideshow. And of course, there's Ringo, the Beatles. The first was a squirrel based on Walt Disney's Perry. And there was also a beagle puppy. Oh, there's Perry right there. Okay. This was based on Perry the squirrel from Disney. And there was a standalone koala that had no licensing rights. There's the beagle and the kitten. Thathy. Max, do not do that again. The dog and cat kits were both tied into food products. The 4th kit was a standalone koala with no licensing ties. The idea behind this series of kits was that you didn't paint them. Okay, you guys ready for this? You glued a fur-like flocking over them. And my sister did the squirrel as Revell intended, and we hated the damn thing. It shed like crazy, and we were always wiping up loose fur. When it came time to do the other 3 kits, we just painted them. Revell also did a series of horse kits, which certainly had a strong female appeal. And don't forget, of course, the Beatles figures kits. And he sent the picture of Ringo there. And Flipper. They call him Flipper. Faster than lightning. In the comments, someone had suggested a dollhouse. Revell was going to do a modular dream house kit. They announced it a couple of times at trade shows, but it was never produced. He doesn't remember what year that was, but they did have a promotional brochure about it. Pyro also designed a house kit to follow Design-A-House kit to follow up with their Design-A-Plane kit and Design-A-Car kits. Bachman, of course, had all those birds, dogs, and other animals. And Remco, well, there's a name I haven't heard in a while. I'm thinking of Ronco. It's, the guys who made the Pocket Fisherman, slices, dices, makes julienne fries. And boy, does it catch fish. God, I think the guy that designed that thing made a bunch of money off of it. Who here remembers the Pocket Fisherman? Anyway, Remco also did some bird kits, but went a step beyond Bachman by including some real feathers. Remco had some horse kits as well. Aurora tried lots of girl-oriented kits, the guys and gals of all nations, which included couples from Holland, China, Scotland, and Mexico, plus a pair of Native Americans. Patterns were completed for a Swiss pair and a bride and groom, but never used. I would think the bride and groom would have been popular. There were a couple of butterfly kits. The Wildlife series was certainly a gender crossover, and some were issued as forged foil models. I actually remember my sisters having the forged foil models with the metal coverings. Although not scale models, Aurora had a line of plastic basket weaving kits. I may actually remember that. I'm never quite sure what I remember and what's the Mandela effect. You think you remember it. There were many more kits along this line, but that's all they could remember. Anyway, so thanks, Andy, for that. So they were quite active in trying to get girls interested in building models, and just get some crossover appeal there. And yes, Douglas, we don't mention the name of that movie. That is the movie whose name is not we do not say. Oh God. It did have a few saving graces. The one thing I found particularly touching about that flick, though, which was also kind of creeping and was true, was that apparently ships like the Arizona, they were hearing banging noises for several days after the attack. They knew there were people trapped underneath. Horrifying thought. But not one person, no one, not a single human being flew for the Eagles in the RAF, then flew at Pearl Harbor, and then flew with the Doolittle Raiders. No one. All of the B-25 pilots who flew the Doolittle Raiders were already experienced B-25 pilots. They weren't fighter jocks. The pocket, I never had one. I never had one, but I do remember seeing them. In fact, when I was in the Panama Canal Zone, there were a couple little Panamanian guys out on the jetty at Fort Sherman fishing with them, and they were catching up a storm. They definitely got their money's worth out of them. But anyway, so apparently they did make several attempts to try and get girls interested in models, but it just wasn't. I suppose they had some nominal success, but it just wasn't the kind of thing that caught on. And as I've mentioned several times before, now these human anatomy models are a different story, but that's the kind of stuff that the Glazers over at Revell really wanted to make. They like making educational toys, and just about every company seems like made them. A lot of them made them in double scale so you could see things blown up. Actually made them in 2-to-1 scale. But those things definitely had a lot of appeal, but they were the kind of thing that somebody bought one time and that was just it, Lou and Royal Glazer would have loved to have made more of that kind of stuff, but like they said, that just isn't what will keep the doors open in the company. That isn't what sells. 99% of our customers are boys, and they like cars, planes, and things that go boom. Yeah, Sarah Jane, car models. I think car models are the gateway drug for most model builders. I've never been able to get a statistic, but at least half of all models made have got to be car models. Popeil, that was it. Popeil. Ron Popeil, wasn't it? The Popeil Pocket Fisherman. You got to admire someone with that kind of giddy up and go. I think the cars still make up the bulk, at least half, especially RCs, because I fly RC airplanes, but then I go in a stop and there's 5 RC cars for every RC airplane. And one reason is to tend not to get lost. You fly an RC airplane, every time that thing takes off, you're taking your chances. Worst thing that happen to a car usually is you break something, but it's not like it's going to get away from you and run away and fly off, a mile away. My airfield 1500 millimeter Zero is still somewhere in the woods of St. Johns County. And, oh really? So Plethman, you built that human eye. What did you think about it? Because I never actually built any of the body part models, and I have no idea how well they fit or anything else. Aurora did do a whitetail disc, correct? I'm just reading some of the comments. She liked fire trucks and hated dolls. She got to fight with her cousin. Well, wait a minute. I've got one here that I'm gonna show it. Here's a link to the female Russian modeling challenge. Okay, exactly what kind of modeling are we talking about? Pete Vetri had told me over at Atlantis, he says, one thing about those animal molds is, although they were not as expensive because there just weren't as many parts, there is an expense in them that's unique to them, that the deeper you cut a part, the more expensive it is. And when you have something like that stagecoach that I built, which was originally a Mark's kit, those horses all had deep cavities, and that made them very expensive to manufacture. In fact, the horses may have been the single most expensive part of that kit. And mind you, in 1955, Mark spent $100,000 to build a mold for that. But that, if you guys ever build, now it's Lindbergh, if you guys ever build what's now the Lindbergh stagecoach, the big one, was it 1/16 scale? That is an undertaking. But you will have a sense of pride when you were done with it. That rates as one of my top builds for me, is like going back and go, oh, looky what I did. There's a real sense of accomplishment behind that. And it does look good. And I think I showed you guys pictures a while back, but the owner, the man I built it for, he had a plexiglass case made for it. And it is the centerpiece of his bar now, with a huge protective plexiglass piece over it. Now he wants me to build him a couple of the little Glencoe smaller scale wagons to go with, not to go with it, but sort of companion pieces. He says, I'll sit back and just enjoy looking at it, admiring it. Man, that's when a model can have that kind of impact, that's just wonderful. It really makes me happy that he's enjoying it that much, because he's a good friend. And another thing I was going to touch on. Let me go up here, see what I got here. Look at some pictures. Oh, my wife was going to throw out some old Christmas lights. I decided to put a little something in the TARDIS, give it a little Christmassy, because this is a conky household Christmas. Godzilla, la 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 la. Yeah, I like that. I appreciate that. It really did. Oh, one other thing I was talking about is displaying your models. Now, this is actually not a model. That's actually, believe it or not, a Hallmark ornament. But my wife liked it so much it went up on the model shelf with the big Enterprise. But I was like, how do I display it? It's made to hang from a tree. So I got this piece of wire and bent it and put it in some cork board. That's just a temporary thing. At some point, I'm going to paint like space or something, or a planet surface or something on that base. It's just one of those little projects. Well, Douglas, somebody gave me a holiday shirt that said Godzilla la 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 fa la la la. A sleigh for Godzilla. Well, he's got a go-kart. Which, by the way, if you ever see a Godzilla's go-kart, just grab it. Just trust me, just grab it. Everybody I know wants one of those things, and they have gotten stupid expensive. And I'm not sure if anybody's going to be making a repop of it or not, but it is a ridiculously popular kit. And King Kong got a car also, but nobody cared. They all wanted the Godzilla go-kart. Oh, really? I should have known that Hallmark would make Godzilla ornaments. I didn't even know about that. And, well, this is that's our Godzilla shelf. Now, as you guys know from me telling you, the one on the far right is the big Polar Lights one. And yes, I know the Japanese didn't fly Mustangs, and it's off scale. He's a 1:144 scale. He's the only one up there that's a kit. The rest of them are all pre-made. And not the little Shin Godzilla on the left, but the one to the right of it, that's actually an RC Godzilla that can walk and make a right turn and roar. And I used him in my little Vermont movie so I could get some walking scenes because the stop motion was taking forever. You want to know a test of patience? Get yourself a movable model and start doing some stop motion work. I have to be honest with you, that Polar Lights Godzilla is really just a well thought out kit. Everything fits okay. Just by virtue of its size, you're going to use some putty in the seams a lot, because just because it's big. The fits aren't that bad. It's just because they're big, but you can hide it in the wrinkles of the skin with a little work. But I'm going to tell you right now, that is a really well done kit. It's probably the best Godzilla kit ever made. And now Atlantis, I think they not only got the old Aurora Godzilla, but I think they've cut a new mold or something like that. Somehow they've got some stuff coming out. So if you're a kaiju fan, there's some stuff coming. I almost bought the Polar Lights Ghidorah kit to go with it, but I mean, I'm out of space up on the shelf, and but came close, chickened out. Yeah, thank you. It is, and it's 16 inches tall. The reason it's up there is it literally didn't fit. It literally could not fit in the cabinet. And I used to keep it in the room where I have, here in the bedroom where I have the rockets up now, but going to sleep every night staring up at that thing, that's nightmare fuel. I did too good a job on it. I know, you got to commit to it, but it does come with a nice base and everything. So it's basically a diorama. And but that's a kit that I almost considered the possibility of how can I put this? I was thinking about, trying to stretch this a little bit. I was trying to think if there was a way that I could make a like a resin copy, like they make a mold using this Godzilla. And what I had considered was if I could get one of those mold kits, take the arms and legs off, make molds, and then pour in a latex so that I have something flexible and make it so that I could basically I wanted to make more or less a glorified hand puppet, so that I could animate it for shooting movies and stuff and doing videos. But that's, you're getting into engineering and stuff, and it would be an interesting project, but you're going to have a lot of how's the what I want to put it? There's going to be a lot of trial and error, and you're going to put a lot of time and probably a fair amount of money in it to get it work. I thought about buying one of those Maori, how do you say it? The big, like 18-inch tall or 16-inch tall RCs. It's actually bigger than that. It's like 2-3 feet tall. Gosh, I can't believe I forgot the name of it. But they're $1,000-$1,500. But they have 6 channels. They walked it. And they're photo quality. And I was like, my wife's like, I think you're getting a little carried away with the hobbies. You did like us a Polar Lights Godzilla head years ago. How'd it turn out, Douglas? How'd it turn out? Because I was thinking if I could just take the model and make latex arms and make the head rotate and stuff, it'd be something where you could walk it or move the arms. But you've got these guys that make these 6-7 foot tall suits and everything they walk around in. I'm like, ooh, that would go really good with an army of 1/16 scale RC tanks. Yes. Because basically I'm a kid at heart. Oh, Claire. Yeah, I don't know if I could. Those salvage guys at Pearl, the things they had to be exposed to. Good God, I'm sure that was something they remember till their dying day. Yeah, I've never worked with latex, Douglas. I see it on Face Off all the time, and I did actually do a little puppeteering in my Godzilla vs. the Vermont movie. I took the skin off the RC Godzilla, second from left, and I put some wires in it and hand puppeted it, and it actually worked pretty well. And we did some stop motion, and the whole thing was an homage to the old kaiju movie, so I wanted to use the old technique, stop motion, puppeteering, things like that, and I had a lot of fun doing it. The fun is, it's great to see the product when you're done, but the fun's really in the making of it, because I'm a kid at heart. Probably always will be. And this is what I'm working on right now. Steve sent me these. And that's the Glencoe, an old Glencoe repop of the Strombecker von Braun space station. And he also sent me that. So I'm putting the lunar lander together too. Oh, he survived being trapped in the Oklahoma. That's no small miracle. Oh, God. Haunting. Yeah, that'd be the right word for it. But, this is what they thought the lunar lander was going to look like back in the day. And when you think about it, in a way, the lunar lander sort of does look like that. If you take the skin off the lunar lander, that thin mylar skin, you find a bunch of round tanks, and that's what it is. It's all round tanks with just these skins in this frame covering it. And of course the dimensions turned out to be different, but that was actually, believe it or not, that design is a feasible design. It could work. There's one thing about the space station design that people forget about, though. They talk about how they can spin it to create gravity, which they can, but the thing is, you're still rotating. And it's very easy if you're working in there, even though you'd be walking around on the outer ring on the inside. If you turn your head or something, the forward and upward rotation while you rotate your head sideways, you're not actually going straight, has can have a debilitating effect on people over time. So rotating things to create a false gravity is something that people would have to adapt to, just like zero gravity, but it would be less damaging. $90 to $200. Well, I don't think I have them handy right here, but I've got some Hallmark ornaments, including a 1/4 scale working communicator from Star Trek. It was about $25 when we bought it. they're out of production, so I have no idea what it costs now. But every year they put out new Star Trek ornaments, and my wife always likes me to get them. So we have a pretty good collection of those. I didn't see the Godzilla ones. I may have to get one next time. Yeah, Bob, I think most people, we don't realize that most people would be. It would definitely it'd be like getting your sea legs, maybe a little bit worse. Space is the enemy of life. But the old Strombecker kits, or the current Glencoe kits, they're very straightforward. They fit okay. There's going to be some flash and some fitting issues, like Nick Argento said when he runs the presses of those things. They're old molds, they're nightmares to work with. He has to do it just right, not to get a bunch of flash and everything. But the subject matter is just so cool, and that's the kind of stuff I just never get tired of. And well, I never get tired of any of this stuff actually. But we already talked about the focal length. Let's see, focal narrow. See, there's narrow, and there's long focal. Exact same thing, just cleans it up. Okay. This picture, I don't think I actually talked about this one. This is one more thing I want to talk about. You will notice now these are two separate photos, but you'll notice on the left that the only thing in focus is the guy close to the camera. Everything as you get further back, it's blurrier and blurrier and blurrier, and that's just not going to fly. On the right, everything's pretty much in focus all the way to the bushes in the back. And that gets back to where we're talking about the wide focal length. That was the picture I wanted to show where you could see it at the same time. And well, now Scott, my wife lets me hang it from the ceiling in the TARDIS. I hang one from the ceiling in the house. You're going to find me hanging from the ceiling in the house. Well, that's a bit of overstatement. Should just make me take it down. But you get my point. And so that was all of the things I had scheduled to talk about. So now it's a free-for-all. What do you guys want to talk about? How does the crew get down? Well, I imagine they come down in a space shuttle type vehicle. A lot of folks don't realize this, but back in the early space program, originally we were going to use dinosaur dynamic soaring, and I didn't realize how much money we'd pumped into that program. I knew they played with it. That was a little 2-man space shuttle thing. I did not realize how much money had gone into it. It was actually a pretty well financed program, but Sputnik and Gagarin and the Russian advances changed everything. Oh, yes, I did. I did see it go up. And being here in Florida, I should have got off my butt and gone down to the beach and actually watched it. I've watched some shuttle launches. You can see them here in Jacksonville. We have a bridge down near Ponte Vedra. And by the way, despite what you hear in the documentary about the German spies, it's Ponte Vedra, not Ponte Verde. Girls in Panzer, heck yeah, man. I never gave a crap about anime until I was making that Godzilla movie, and I needed some German tank footage, and I found the animations. Well, these are really good looking animations, but it's a little off. And then I saw, why is there a teenage girl sticking her head out of a friggin' king tiger or a panther? And then I'm like, what is going on here? And then I get introduced to Girls in Panzer, and I was like, it was like a train wreck. You're like, what is this? I don't know what this is, but I can't stop watching it. And my wife was looking at me like, what are you watching? I was like, it's about the tanks, baby. And if you guys haven't seen Girls in Panzer, just go watch some clips on YouTube. It's out of this world. And then I find out apparently the Japanese have done a whole bunch of anime of that line. They've done it with jet fighters and everything else. And I'm like, things that make you go, I still don't know what to make of it. But God, Nick Moran, the chieftain, the man himself, is actually the technical advisor for, was it Sentai that makes those? That's why the friggin' tanks are so accurate, right down to the buckets hanging off the back of them. John Ashley Smith, I would say it's definitely an acquired taste. There's a guy in Japan. He's got a little YouTube video that he put up. He takes Tamiya kits and makes them radio control and 1/35th scale. And you can buy the metal, and he gets I did not realize you can spend up to $400 just getting the metal link tracks for a Panzer VIII mouse in 1/35 scale. And he gets the geared down motors so they go real slow and drive at scale speed and everything. And he makes these magnificent models. He puts these YouTube videos up. And of course, he always puts like the QRI or Kuro Marine markings on them. And he always has like Miho or one of them, by those little figures are friggin' $30. And he always puts one in the tank. And I'm like, brother, that's commitment. And people are weird, myself included. Oh, you're talking about Sophie Line. Oh yeah, I watched The Chieftain, and I've seen Sophie Line's channel, and what can I say? She's found her niche, and so just like The Chieftain has. My favorite one, I think, is a crossover with Ian McCullum from Forgotten Weapons and The Chieftain when they went out and played on the Sherman, and his famous words, "That target offends me. Make it go away." And they're banging away with the 50 caliber and the 30 caliber, hitting it with the cannon. And if you've got the money to spare, you can go down and drive a Sherman and fire the gun. But if you do fire the gun, you're not allowed to be in the tank. You have to fire from outside the tank with a lanyard for safety. And given that it's a 70-year-old gun, probably a good idea. America! I love this place. I start collecting 1/35 scale risen figures of anime characters, and yeah, that's not going to happen. Yeah, that's right, with Hilary Doyle. Now, as much as I love Hilary Doyle, and I do, over at the Tank Museum, what's his name with the mustache? Can't believe I've forgotten his name. Oh, gosh, somebody tell me, come on. Oh man, the guy that always talks about the tanks, that's got the big bushy mustache. Hellcat at a breach trail, yeah. David Fletcher, thank you, Steve. Okay, first off, David Fletcher is probably my favorite person to listen to about tanks because he's just so straightforward, honest, and he's talking right off the top of his head. But as far as I'm concerned, David Fletcher's mustache is a British national treasure. But unlike the others, I don't think he rehearses. I think he's just going right off of what and I'm not knocking anybody. The Chieftain clearly researches this stuff thoroughly and does magnificent work. The hours he spends in archives going through material, and the rest of that gang, all of them. But David, I'm pretty sure he could walk up to any tank in that museum and just right off the top of his head rattle this off. And he is truly a national treasure. Heck, he's an international treasure. The tank chats are great. And anytime I see David Fletcher giving one, I don't care what I'm doing, that I've got to watch. What worries me a little bit is that as time goes by and all of us age out, I'm afraid we're going to start losing that knowledge base. And that'd be sad. The books will be around. Oh, they do a face. Oh my God, I might have to go order one of those. He should get a waiver on wearing a mask because he has one on all the time. I'm a bad person. Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. Well, man, you have a good day. Take care and model on, brother. But I would imagine if most of us, if we compared our the channels we see, there's a lot of overlap. A lot of us probably watch Tank Chats, Dark Docs, Dark Skies, Military History Visualized, Military Aviation, and Maxsmodels, and I just found Lucas C's channel on cars, and of course there's Scale Model Garage and Mystic Modeler, and A lot of the same stuff, which is all good because we all share the hobbies. Vintage space, yep. Amy knows her stuff. She's and what of course there's a lot to the space program. One of the things, although she's kind of expanded beyond the space cruise and she's doing stuff on the U2 now, but one of the things I do like is she gets into that oddball minutia, which is the kind of stuff I really enjoy. I mean, she did her master's thesis on that hang glider gizmo they tried to put on a Gemini, which the beauty of it was people were willing to experiment back then. You know, they were not nearly as, yeah, I'm sure we've all seen Mark Felton. And I didn't realize that some of our tankers were successful. He did one recently on an American tank ace. Well, was that Felton or was that somebody else? I think no, that was somebody else. But Felton does a lot of great stuff. And as much as I've read about the Second World War and history, he finds things I'd never even heard of. And that's great. Tiger's a slot car? That sounds entertaining. Tank races. Ooh. I choose the Hellcat. I saw one of those things. We have a guy down here near the land that has a complete he has five armored vehicles and a couple more track vehicles. Then they have like this road show. They take it around the local area, all the military vehicle stuff. They've got a Hellcat. I've got some video of it on my channel. They got a Hellcat. They got a 105 Sherman. They have another Sherman, but I forget which one it is, which model it is. So they have two Shermans, but one of them's got the 105. A Hellcat, a Jackson, an M7 Priest, which is the self-propelled artillery piece. And they also have a Long Tom with a tracked trailer. What they don't have, although they're usually when they go there, there's one there, but it's not theirs. What they don't have is a half track, which I was kind of surprised. The thing that makes their tanks different is everything, including the guns, are operational. So they have to have the destructive device licenses and everything. So they can fire. I mean, they only shoot blanks, and their 50 cals and 30 cals are blank fire. But they're probably still Class 2 guns and or Class 3 guns. So, but they have a show they put on, and they have some German equipment. They have a motorcycle and couple other things, and they have the guys that, and you know, you gotta give these guys credit for commitment, because they all have to get their black powder certificates and everything and their explosive device certificates to work around it. They put in a lot of time. They don't get paid. It's all volunteer, and yeah, they get to play with real tanks, but they put on a nice show, and these guys are running around in Florida in the summertime in like German winter uniforms and stuff. I mean, man, that's commitment. And they do what reenactments they can of actual small skirmishes that took place. That 155 Long Tom, man, that's something. And well, it is, but their training is high also. You can't just go down there and work with them. I mean, they have a program you have to go through to learn the equipment, the do's and don'ts. You have to get your black powder handling certificate to even be on the team, because anybody may have to handle it. And I don't think they've had any accidents. They're very careful. I mean, they get plenty of bangs and bruises, but yeah, you get to spend the weekend driving around in a Sherman. And of course, what the audience doesn't see is when they pack these things up and take them home, then they got to go home and do all the maintenance on them. But they call him the Colonel, and that's the rank he's given himself. The guy that owns the operation does it, though. He funds it, and God bless him. You know, it's just, I'm glad there's still people that have that kind of interest. The last thing out of Normandy. Actually, there was a sort of a tank race in the Korean War, but I think it was Mark Felton, and I'd already read a little bit about this, but Mark Felton did a thing on the first conflict of the first time we used, I think it was the Patton in combat, and North Koreans had the T-34s, and it did extremely well, but it actually shot through one T-34 and knocked out one behind it. So clearly, you know, times had changed in the intervening 5 years between wars. But when I was in the Army, they had the M60, which some people call a Patton. It was a follow-on to it, but it was I was there right with the M1 Abrams was coming in, and the M1 Abrams wasn't, well, still is a first-class tank, but when it came in, it was like, it might as well have been a spaceship, a turbine-powered tank. I mean, think it goes 60 miles an hour. And you think about it, you're rolling 70 tons down the road at 60 miles an hour. What could go wrong? Tanks on a slot car. How would you slot car a tank? I mean, the tracks alone, boy, steering would be a trick. The armored vehicle that did surprisingly well that no one expected were those Rolls-Royce armored cars that were basically left over in the First World War. But apparently, the early part of the war, they ran around the desert surprisingly effectively, especially on those skinny tires. I'm just reading the comments here. Yeah. The RC tank that I have, the Tiger, is a lot of fun, but I've seen guys, and I'm talking about Tamiya. You can have a $10,000 in an RC model Tamiya. I mean, that's... Oof. The history guy, yeah, that's Lance Geiger is the history guy. I watch a lot of his stuff, and he loves aircraft. So does Mustard. If you guys have ever seen any of Mustard's videos, and he does all of his own graphics, which are very impressive. If you haven't seen Mustard, he's a must check out. Yeah, they are. What I don't like, the one thing that really turns me off of in models, and you see it in everything. You see it in cars, you see it in guns, you see it in models, you see it in airplanes, any hobby you've got. The skydiving, the works. There's always going to be that clique of guys that, oh, you don't have a Tamiya, your kit doesn't count. Grow up, people. And the hair splitting over stuff can get, it's like a running joke, at least with the people that are on this channel. People love to poke fun at the IPMS, and I have yet to have somebody come to their defense. Oh, everybody remembers Gunny, Arlie Ermy. Yeah, he sadly passed away. He caught pneumonia while he was in the hospital, and he was a real loss. Oh, yeah. Weren't those the Cromwells were hiding under the bridge, I think? And he's like, oh, those like one of ours. That's not one of ours. Ours shouldn't be over there. Warp speed didn't work on a Tiger tank. Yeah, mine's a Tegan, which is, it's a mid-range, mid-quality. But it's fun, the way I treat it. My nephew, and I actually think I have a video of it, my nephew was driving it, and the ground was wet. He went over a little hill with it, and and there was a pond on the other side. He drove it right into the pond, completely submerged it. And I got some drone footage and pick it up, and all the water coming out of it. It's still, the gun still won't elevate. Well, some of these guys, they'll put on the VR goggles, put the camera on the tank, and they'll run around and play shoot 'em up, with the tanks, but the only thing they can see what's in the VR goggles. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. Kind of like playing World of Tanks, but in your own backyard with a sort of a real tank. And outtakes the best part. Oh, Mark, you taking off? Take care, man. Keep thinking there was something else I wanted to talk about, but I forget what it was. So it can't have been that important. But there was one thing that hearing past your model shops, there was one thing I wanted to talk about. I used to be based in Charlotte for 5 years, and NASCAR, of course, Charlotte, home of NASCAR. No. Don't need the blue bombers for the Tiger tank. Anyway, so I'm looking at one of the NASCAR. They put the cars in the airport on display when they retire a race car. And you don't realize how short the service life on those things is. So I'm sitting there looking at one of the cars. And of course, it's just an aluminum shell that looks like a Camaro or whatever. It's not. There's not a single original car part on there. So Uh, I'm looking how thin the aluminum is, and then I'm looking at a model of a car, and I'm like, you realize that the plastic skin of a model car is about 20 times as thick as the actual skin on a NASCAR race car. I mean, you could not make a scale skin thin enough to go on a NASCAR model at like 124 scale. It would be paper thin, and you wouldn't be able to make one that wouldn't just like buckle at the touch. You wouldn't be able to hold enough paint that the light didn't go through it, which gets you to thinking about these guys are streaking around these tracks at the speed of heat in these aluminum shells. And that's why the pictures that Mark had sent me earlier, those little 1960s Formula One race cars, I'm like, man, there's just nothing there. At least on a motorcycle, you get tossed off. This thing, you're going to be trapped in there with the ball of flame. Those guys had guts. Little tankettes, yeah, but the little tiny tanks did move though. They were fast. You forget you tend to forget a lot of these little tankettes that we see that were used in the early war that were left over from the 30s. That was just the technology of the day. No one laughed at them back then because no one knew that 3, 4, 5 years down the road there was going to be the Sherman and the Mark IV. God, no one could have even envisioned the Tiger tank. That would be like us talking about what about in 5 years when we're running around in flying saucers. Speaking of which, here's a question: what are you guys' favorite sci-fi models? Invaders. I wish someone would make a model of the Razor Crest. I mean, a good solid kit styrene plastic model of the Razor Crest. As soon as that happens, I'm buying 2 of them. Make a fist, wrap the other. Good God, that's small. Contrary to what people think, the Italians actually were good mechanics and very, very good tankers for, like you say, for what they had, at least at the beginning of the war. Klingon Bird of Prey, yeah, that's definitely an awesome one. Well, some people argue about what is sci-fi. I mean, obviously stuff like Star Trek and Battlestar, that's all sci-fi. But some people think that the science fiction doesn't really apply to like the Werner von Braun designs because they were supposed to be science fact, they just weren't made. So some people argue about whether or not that's unmade science fact or actually science fiction because it was never made. Not an argument I really get into, but Star Wars are cool. The Star Wars X-Wing fighter was originally conceived of in the first model made from a model dragster. That's why they had that long body on them. And the guy just went and bought a model dragster, ripped off the wheels, slapped on these little skinny X-Wings and put a little bubble in the cockpit and said, it'll look something like this. And that's how the X-Wing was born, and everything came out of that. My brother actually had a box top of the mystery ship on his shelf for the longest time, and it was the glow-in-dark one. Yeah, it was the glow-in-dark one. It's funny. Somebody recently put one up about Italian aircraft being good. The Mach-E C-202 could outturn a Mustang, and the was it a Fiat G50 or one of them that was supposed to be like their best fighter. And then there was another one, and he was just talking about was the Luftwaffe flew them and actually loved them. But the real acknowledgement of Italian fighter planes, I have 2 Klingon D7s. One's a Katinga, but I have one of the original ones also. In fact, the Klingon D7 is what I gave to Fernando as his very first model. Yeah, the G56, that's it, the G56. But the real testament to how great they were, in my opinion, came when Eric Brown flew them after the war, test flew them. And he gave them glowing reports. He said it was the best of German engineering with the best of Italian styling. He really loved that airplane. Kind of short range, and it had its limitations, but overall it's an excellent airplane. Beautiful handling. And a little, was it Whipple? What do they call him? Whipple? But Eric Brown, the British Chuck Yeager, the man flew everything. And if he gave it the thumbs up, then it must have been good because he always seemed like a real straight shooter. Yeah, the Reggiani, that's the other one I was thinking of. But the G55 and the G56, those were just incredible. Yeah, I'm not sure why Matt Jeffries designed the Life Erickson. If that was for supposed to be for a TV show, or was just something he did for the model companies. And I remember it being released under different names. The Lost of Space derelict model. That's interesting. He hasn't built it yet. He's at school, and then the COVID hit. But he does have it, and I'm going to get to it sometime. Winky Brown. Yeah, that was Winkle Brown, and yeah, he's somebody I would have liked to have met. Man, it's funny. Test pilots either die young or live to be very old, because Brown passed away in his 90s. Chuck Yeager's still alive, and I think he's 95. And that's right. The 202 was basically the 200 with the DB601, and I don't know what kind of race car they came off of. I could be wrong. I just remember looking at that, because you could just go up and touch it because it was retired. I remember looking at it, just going, man, of course they have the bracing into the framework inside and everything, but race cars are well, I'm speaking of NASCAR, but even race cars, obviously there's nothing on them that doesn't have to be there. The one that terrifies me, you wouldn't even get me in as a dragster. I mean, you might as well strap a 500,000 horsepower engine to your butt. I see those drag. I mean, they're shaking around, they shake themselves apart, just revving up, waiting to go. And you see them. How often do you see a dragster go down where they got quarter inch of steering or something? He goes flying down and he just wiggles out of control. I'm like, good God. And I fly jets. I would have been cool if Brown could have gone to the moon. Um, you talk about that Eagle Transporter. To me, the Eagle Transporter is one of the best thought out Hollywood science fiction vehicles, because the platform was used for a variety of vehicles, like a platform like that would have been. And it looked like the technology. It was in line with the technology that they were representing. In fact, although some of the plots, the plot was a little odd. Space 1999, which was supposed to be the second season of UFO, was had an incredibly good aesthetic to it. The one thing that I never saw them explain, and maybe they did and I missed it, was how they had Earth normal gravity, and I assume they had some sort of artificial gravity. But yeah, exactly. The Eagle looked like a real thing, and I think it was supposed to replace the UFO Interceptor, which is also one of my favorite vehicles. I think UFO Interceptor was a very interesting designed. You mean the Sky Crane? But yeah, you're right. And there's a lot to be said for that, given it that mechanical industrial look, that Sikorsky Sky Crane look. The driver's an inconvenient component. Yeah, it's kind of like a fighter plane. When they designed the P-38, they were like, "Yeah, this plane's perfect. Where are we going to put the pilot?" Oh yeah, well, we'll put a little bubble right here for him. As big as that plane was, apparently had an incredibly tight cockpit. No worries. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Sky Crane. I actually saw those fly, and the last group to have them was in the Army was the Pennsylvania International Guard, the PANG, and they had them out at Fort Indiantown Gap. And I only know that because I happened to fly out there and land there one day, and I was like, "Man, somebody's still flying Sky Cranes?" The guy's like, "They're gone at the end of the year. Last ones in the Army." And the Chinook has been a worthwhile replacement. One of the advantage Chinook has is one of my first officers flew the I don't know, there's the big Air Force job, the Sea Stallions, and he said that only the Chinook. If you ever saw American Sniper, when the Chinook's flying them over the mountains of Afghanistan, they were trouble with ice and everything else, and apparently that was not exaggerated. It was that was damn tricky flying, especially for a helicopter. But the Chinooks were the only one to make it. They tried to use some of the other choppers, and what happened was they got it in the thin air and they ran out of anti-torque rotor effectiveness. They had the pedal on the floor and the helicopter would just start to turn because the air got so thin the anti-torque rotor couldn't fight the torque of the big rotor. So The Chinook doesn't have an anti-torque rotor, just has the two main rotors, and that was the only one that could do it. So that thing has become absolutely indispensable up there in the mountains. Silent Running, it did have that industrial look, but Silent Running was actually filmed on board a retired aircraft carrier, which is one of the reasons the inside looks so good. But you're right, the ships absolutely had an authentic look to them, and in fact, I think there's a Sense of Scale video about making that movie. And oh yeah, the Angel Interceptors were awesome. When I first saw one, I'd never heard of the show or anything. I just this looks cool, but I didn't know what it was, so I got something else. I personally, one of my favorites just out of Star Wars, the Y-Wing. I like the X-Wing too, but I always thought the Y-Wing had that, with all the panels off of it and all the equipment show. I just thought it had that sort of muscular look to it. Yeah, that's Ericsson Sky Crane that still flies them, I believe. Oh, really? Yeah. They throw these models away. The spectrum is green. Yeah. The B-Wing is an interesting concept. The A-Wing is supposed to be the real hot rod, but my big butt probably wouldn't fit in one. Yeah, Pegasus is making some real nice stuff. They make that War of the Worlds stuff. They make the they got Mobius's stuff, and Mobius is making some interesting stuff too. A lot of Battlestar and that kind of stuff. Yeah, me too. I like the Y-Wing, man. It just, to me, it's just like it's like the big old tough dumb guy that won't quit fighting. And but my brother and I used to call it the Hawker Hurricane of space. Love those classic looks. Hey, Daryl. That Damnation Alley vehicle is still around. There was a movie called The Wizard of Space and Time, a little indie film made by Mike Janovich, I think, and where he used a lot of the old school special effects techniques. And when he rides his bicycle by, you see the vehicle because he lived in Hollywood, you see the vehicle from Damnation Alley in a garage behind him, and apparently it's like the Batcar. It's in some private collection. And by the way, on a side note for all you car guys out there, you probably already know this, but recently did a video. Somebody found the original Mustang from the movie Bullitt, Steve McQueen's Mustang, and it was in pretty bad shape. They've got it running, but they won't restore it because they don't want to, even though it's in rough shape, if they restore it, they lose all of the original paint and everything, and apparently despite all of its problems. But the guy was driving around, but it is the one from the movie, and it's still on the road. The Sky Raider, I like that. Yeah. That's a pretty good analysis. The sort of had a debate. Some people think that it's that the whole Star Wars thing, it's the War of the Pacific, with the TIE fighter being the Zeros and the X-Wing being the Corsairs and Hellcats, and the Y-Wing being the Wildcats. But I take more of the European approach. I see the Y-Wing as the Hurricane, the X-Wing as a Spitfire, and the TIE fighter as the Messerschmitt, and the TIE bomber is the ME-110. But when was it sold? Because these people had it recently. I saw the video recently, but and they probably got offered too much money and had to let it go. They were keenly aware of what they had. No one was going to get some sort of good deal on it. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, listen, guys, I have to do a Zoom call this afternoon here shortly, and I'm going to disconnect here and let you guys chat amongst yourself for a few minutes before I shut it down. I want to thank everyone for coming out and enjoying the show. And I want to wish everybody, I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving for those who celebrate Thanksgiving. And I want to wish everybody a happy holiday. And we'll see if we can't depending on what happens with the schedule, maybe we can get together next week.